Ethan Brooks slammed his laptop shut so hard the coffee mug rattled off the desk and shattered on the floor. His hands were shaking. Not from anger. From something worse. Something he hadn't felt in 4 years and had no name for anymore. A single photograph. 30 seconds on a screen. And now he couldn't breathe right. He told himself it meant nothing. He told himself he was just tired. He was lying. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. Because this one goes places you won't expect. Ethan Brooks had not broken anything in his apartment in 2 years. The last time was a plate ceramic blue-rimmed one of a matching set his wife Dana had picked out at a flea market in Coronado the summer before Mia was born. He'd dropped it while washing dishes at midnight, 3 weeks after the funeral, and he'd stood there in the kitchen, looking at the pieces on the floor for a long time before he finally bent down and picked them up. He hadn't cried. He'd just cleaned it up and kept going. That was Ethan Brooks, in 4 words. He kept going. 35 years old, single father, construction engineer for a mid-size firm downtown that specialized in coastal infrastructure projects. Every morning at 5:47 a.m. alarm. Coffee in a travel mug because there wasn't time for anything else. Drop Mia at school by 7:30, on site or in meetings by 8:15. Pick her up at 3:45 unless Mrs. Calloway across the hall could do it. And Mrs. Calloway was 71 and had bad knees, so Ethan tried not to ask too often. Home by 6. Dinner. Homework. Bath. Story. Lights out for Mia by 8:30. Then emails, project specs, billing disputes, city permit paperwork, and somewhere between 11 p.m. and midnight sleep. Repeat. That had been his life for 4 years. He had built it deliberately, the way he built everything carefully with attention to load-bearing structure, making sure nothing wobbled. It worked. Mostly. Mia was happy. Smart. She had her mother's eyes, dark brown, thoughtful, the kind that noticed everything, and Dana's habit of tilting her head slightly to the left whenever she was concentrating. Sometimes Ethan would catch it across the dinner table, and his chest would do that thing, that tightening, squeezing thing, and he'd look back down at his food and just breathe through it. He was fine. They were fine. And then it was a Tuesday night in October, and Mia had a worksheet on multiplication that she kept insisting she already knew, but clearly did not. And Ethan's phone kept buzzing with emails from the Bayview Hills Parent Community Group, a neighborhood listserv he'd joined because the school recommended it and had never once found useful, and somewhere around 9:45 p.m. After Mia was finally asleep, Ethan sat down at the kitchen table with cold coffee and his laptop and started working through the backlog. The parent group emails were mostly announcements. Bake sale rescheduled. Library book donation drive. Reminder about the school's no-nut policy. He scanned and deleted. Scanned and deleted. Then he hit one from 3 days ago, subject line beach cleanup recap photos. He didn't mean to open it. He was looking for a contractor invoice buried somewhere in that same inbox. His thumb, and he would think about this later. The specific mechanics of how it happened, his thumb tapped the wrong thing. The email opened. There was a Google Photos album link embedded in the body. He tapped that too, still not really paying attention, still scanning for the invoice. The album loaded, and the first photo that filled his screen stopped him cold. She was standing at the water's edge. Blue swimsuit, simple, nothing flashy. The ocean behind her was caught mid-motion, a wave just breaking against her knees. Foam spreading white across the sand. Her hair was wet and pushed back from her face. Her head was tilted back slightly, mouth open, laughing at something completely off camera. The kind of laugh that wasn't posed, wasn't aware of itself, wasn't trying to be anything. It was just real. Ethan stared at it. He didn't know how long. Maybe 10 seconds. Maybe 30. In the lower corner of the photo, in that small white caption box, a name, Sophie Harper. He closed the album, closed the email, sat back in his chair. "Okay," he said out loud to no one, just to hear his own voice in the quiet kitchen. He found the invoice, answered 3 work emails, closed the laptop. He went to bed. He did not sleep for a long time. "Dad?" Mia's voice cut through the fog at 6:12 a.m. She was standing in the doorway of his bedroom in her pajamas, the ones with the little foxes on them, holding her stuffed elephant Peanut by one ear. Her hair was a spectacular disaster. "Alarm didn't go off," she asked very seriously. "Alarm doesn't go off for another 35 minutes, Bug." "Oh." She considered this. "I couldn't sleep." "Come here." She padded across the room and climbed up next to him, tucking herself under his arm the way she'd done since she was 2 years old. And Ethan stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathe and thought about absolutely nothing at all until the alarm actually went off. "Dad?" "Yeah." "You smell like coffee." "I haven't had coffee yet." "You just always smell like coffee." "Thank you, Mia." "You're welcome." He got up, made the coffee, started the day. He did not think about the photo. He thought about it constantly. The thing was, and Ethan turned this over in his head for the better part of 3 days, it wasn't attraction. Or it wasn't just attraction. He was a 35-year-old man, not a teenager. He knew the difference between noticing that a woman was beautiful and whatever this low-grade current under his ribs was. It was the laugh. Something about the complete unself-consciousness of it. The way her whole face was involved. He kept seeing it at odd moments, waiting for the light to change on Harbor Drive, loading the dishwasher, sitting in a budget meeting, while his project manager talked about rebar costs. That laugh. Just flickering at the edge of his awareness, like a radio signal he couldn't quite tune out. He felt slightly insane. He also, somewhere around day 3, became aware that Sophie Harper's name kept appearing in the parent group emails he had previously been deleting without reading. Reminder: Sophie Harper is coordinating the school library volunteer schedule. Contact her at. Thanks to Sophie Harper for organizing this month's book drive, 47 boxes collected. The fall reading corner in room 6 was designed and built by Sophie Harper and a team of parent volunteers. He read every one. He told himself he was just being a more engaged parent. He was still lying. It was a Thursday afternoon, 10 days after the photo, when Ethan pulled up to Laurel Park Elementary and saw her for the first time in person. He almost didn't realize it was her. There was a woman standing near the side gate where the second-grade class came out talking to one of the teachers. She was wearing a light green jacket and jeans, her hair down and dry. Nothing at all like the ocean-soaked image he'd been accidentally carrying around in his head for over a week. She was gesturing with both hands as she talked, animated but not loud. Then she laughed, and Ethan, who had just put his truck in park, sat very still for a second. That's her. He knew it the same way you know a song from the first 3 notes. He got out of the truck. He collected himself, straightened his jacket, ran a hand through his hair, then immediately felt stupid for doing that, and walked toward the gate. Mia came flying out of the side door, the way she always did. Backpack, bouncing 20 pounds of pure kinetic energy. "Dad?" "Hey, Bug." He caught her, steadied the backpack. "Good day." "We did long division. I'm actually good at it." "I know you are." "Also, Tyler Marsh ate a crayon, but it was an accident." "That's..." Ethan started. "Mr. Brooks." He turned. Sophie Harper was 3 feet away, and she was looking at him with a politely uncertain expression, the look of someone who thinks they recognize a face but isn't quite sure. "I'm Sophie Harper," she said, extending her hand. "I volunteer here on Thursdays. You're Mia's dad, right, Ms. Delgado pointed you out." "Ethan." He shook her hand. "Yeah, that's me." Up close, she was... He made himself not finish that thought. She had a small scar on her chin, very faint. She was maybe 30, 31. Her handshake was firm and quick, businesslike. "Nice to meet you," she said. "Mia talks about you a lot." "Should I be worried about that?" Sophie smiled. "She says you make excellent grilled cheese." "That's my one skill." "She also says you work too much." Ethan blinked. "She told me that," he said. "She told everyone," Mia said cheerfully from somewhere around his elbow. "Ms. Sophie, did you bring more books today?" Sophie's whole face changed when she looked down at Mia. That professional pleasantness just dropped away, and something warmer took its place. She crouched down to Mia's level, which Ethan noticed because most adults didn't do that. "I did," Sophie said. "I left them with Ms. Delgado. You can pick one tomorrow." "Can I pick two? One per week is the rule. What if I read really fast? Then you come back next Thursday and tell me all about it, and maybe I bring an extra." Mia considered this like it was a formal negotiation. Then, deal. She stuck out her hand. Sophie shook it completely seriously. Ethan watched this and felt something in his chest do that thing. The tightening. The squeeze. But this time, it was different. This time, it didn't hurt. He thought about that for a long time on the drive home. Mia talked about school the whole way. Tyler Marsh's crayon incident got a full investigative report, complete with her personal theory on how it happened. "I think he was just curious, Dad, like how you're curious about things." And Ethan made the right noises and asked the right questions and got dinner started by 6:15. But in the back of his mind, something was happening that he didn't quite have language for. It had been 4 years since anyone had made him feel like that. 4 years since anything had interrupted the machinery of his days. The alarm, the coffee, the drive, the work, the pickup, the dinner, the homework, the story, the silence, the sleep, and the alarm again. 4 years of keeping going. He turned the burgers on the stove and watched the grease spit and wondered what it meant that 30 seconds of a woman shaking hands with his daughter had cracked something open he'd spent 4 years walling shut. "Dad?" "Yeah, Bug." Mia was sitting at the kitchen table working on something in her sketchbook. She didn't look up. "Is Ms. Sophie nice?" "Yeah," he said. "She seems nice." "I think she's lonely." Ethan turned around. "What makes you say that?" Mia shrugged, still drawing. "I don't know. She's always there for everybody else, but nobody's really there for her." She paused, pencil hovering. "I notice things." "You do," Ethan said. He turned back to the stove. He stood there for a long moment, not really seeing the burgers. She's always there for everybody else, but nobody's really there for her. 7 years old, he thought. 7 years old and sharper than half the adults I know. Over the following 2 weeks, he began to understand slowly and against his will that Sophie Harper was one of those people. The kind of person a whole community is quietly built around without anyone ever quite acknowledging it. She ran the Little Free Library program at 3 schools in the district. She organized the Thanksgiving food drive at the community center on 5th. She had apparently, according to a parent group email he read on a Wednesday night, instead of sleeping personally driven 2 boxes of donated winter coats to a family shelter in Barrio Logan last January when the regular volunteer couldn't make it. She also ran a small used bookstore on the corner of Grape and Kettner in Little Italy. Harper's Books, the sign said in hand-painted letters that he had driven past approximately 40 times in his life without ever going in. He went in once that second week on a Saturday morning, while Mia was at her friend Zoe's place. He told himself he just needed to pick up something to read. He owned a Kindle. He never used it. The store smelled like old paper and cedar, and a little like coffee. The shelves were crowded, but not chaotic. There were handwritten recommendation cards tucked into the shelves at intervals, not the slick laminated kind, just index cards in neat handwriting. "If you liked this, try that. This one wrecked me in the best way. Read this when you need to believe people are good." Sophie wasn't there. A young guy with glasses behind the counter told him she'd stepped out for a delivery. Ethan bought a novel he would never read. Went home. Felt absurd. "You're doing that thing again," said Marcus Webb. Marcus was Ethan's project foreman and had been since Ethan's first year at the firm. He was 52, built like a defensive tackle and possessed of an almost supernatural ability to identify when Ethan was thinking about something that wasn't rebar. They were on site walking a foundation inspection on the new complex off Rosecrans. It was a cold morning. Marcus had a thermos of coffee. Ethan had forgotten his. "What thing?" Ethan said. "The thing where you go quiet, but your eyes are still moving. Like your body's here, but your head went somewhere else." Marcus glanced at him sideways. "What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm looking at the formwork." "You haven't looked at the formwork once since we left the trailer." Ethan stopped walking. He looked at the formwork. "It's fine." "I know it's fine. I checked it an hour ago." Marcus waited. "What's going on?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "You ever," he started. Stopped. Started again. "You ever feel like you got comfortable with something being over? Like you just accepted it the way it was? And then something small happens, something totally random, and all of a sudden the thing you accepted is back up for debate, without you agreeing to it." Marcus looked at him steadily. "We talking about a person?" Ethan didn't answer. "It's okay if we are," Marcus said. "I just saw a photograph," Ethan said. "That's it. I saw a photograph and I met her once for about 2 minutes. That's the whole story." "It's nothing." "Sure. It's not like anything's going to. I've got Mia. I've got the Rosecrans project and the Bay Bridge assessment, and I haven't slept more than 6 hours in..." "Ethan." "What?" "I'm not telling you to do anything," Marcus said. "I'm just saying." He took a long drink of his coffee. "Dana's been gone 4 years. You've done a hell of a job. You've kept that little girl whole, and you've kept yourself together. But you can't tell me that's all there is now." He paused. "Dana wouldn't tell you that either." Ethan looked out over the construction site. The bay was visible in the distance, gray and flat under the morning clouds. "I don't even know her," he said. "So get to know her." "It's not that simple." "Most things are simpler than you're making them." Marcus capped his thermos. "Come on, let's actually look at this formwork." 2 days later, Ethan found himself standing outside Laurel Park Elementary at 3:38 p.m., 7 minutes early, which he never was. He told himself it was because he'd left the Rosecrans site early, which was true. He had left early. He had left early for a reason he was not examining. Sophie came out of the side entrance at 3:44, a canvas tote full of books over one shoulder, her green jacket buttoned against the wind. She saw him and stopped for just a half second, a small involuntary pause before continuing toward him. "You're early," she said. "Little bit." She came to stand near the fence, setting the tote down, and for a moment neither of them said anything. The wind moved through the eucalyptus trees along the far edge of the schoolyard. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Sure." "The book drive, the library program, the food stuff at Thanksgiving." He nodded toward the school. "You do all of that and you have the store. That's how do you have time?" She looked at him a little surprised. "You've been paying attention." "I read the parent emails now." "No one reads the parent emails." "I do," he said. "Apparently." Sophie studied him for a moment with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not closed, just careful, like someone who'd learned to check the temperature before stepping in. "I don't have a lot else going on," she said finally, lightly, but something underneath it that wasn't quite light. "That's what my daughter said." "Mia." Sophie blinked. "What did she say?" "She said you're always there for everyone else," Ethan said. "But nobody's really there for you." Sophie went very still. "She's 7. Ethan added a little lamely. "She's 7, Sophie repeated. Something moved through her face, a flicker quick and real. She looked away toward the school gate, and for a moment she was quiet. "She's not wrong," Sophie said finally, quietly. "No," Ethan agreed. "She usually isn't." The gate opened then, and Mia came out at full velocity, and the moment whatever it was shifted back to the ordinary business of end-of-school day. But Ethan noticed that Sophie laughed easier for the rest of that conversation. And he noticed walking to his truck with Mia chattering beside him that he felt lighter than he had in longer than he could easily remember. Not fixed. Not transformed. Just lighter. Like something in him had opened a window it had been keeping shut. And somewhere at the back of his mind, in a place he wasn't quite ready to look at directly yet, he thought, this is how it starts. He didn't know yet what it was going to cost him, or what it was going to give back. But for the first time in 4 years, Ethan Brooks was paying attention to something that wasn't work, wasn't duty, and wasn't grief. And somewhere in Little Italy, in a small bookstore with hand-painted letters on the sign, a woman who had spent years showing up for everyone else was about to discover what it felt like when someone decided to show up for her. The window stayed open. That was the thing Ethan couldn't quite explain to himself in the days that followed. It wasn't like the movies, no sudden rush of feeling, no moment where everything became clear and bright and simple. It was quieter than that. More like pressure releasing from somewhere he hadn't known was pressurized. He'd walk through his morning routine alarm coffee, Mia's hair backpack check drive, and somewhere in the middle of it, he'd realize he wasn't grinding through the motions the way he usually did. He was just doing them. Present. Awake in a way he hadn't been in a long time. He didn't examine it too hard. Ethan Brooks had learned the hard way that examining things too hard had a way of breaking them. What he did instead was show up at school pickup 7 minutes early every Thursday. He told himself it was about adjusting his schedule. He'd been leaving the Rosecrans site earlier anyway because the city inspector kept rescheduling and there was nothing productive to do on site after 3. That was true. It was also completely beside the point. Sophie noticed. She didn't say anything about it directly. She wasn't that kind of person, he was learning. But on the 3rd Thursday she was already standing near the fence when he got there, and she handed him a paper cup of coffee without explanation. "You look like you haven't eaten since this morning," she said. "I had lunch." "What did you have?" He thought about it. Half a protein bar and a Gatorade. "That's not lunch, that's a cry for help." She nodded toward the cup. "It's from the cart on the corner. They know me." Ethan took the coffee. It was hot and black and exactly right. "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to." She turned back toward the school gate, watching for the kids. That's what makes it an actual nice thing versus an obligation. He stood beside her and drank the coffee and thought that he could not remember the last time anyone had done something kind for him that was purely optional. Mrs. Calloway brought Mia cookies sometimes, but that was for Mia. His mother called on Sundays, but those calls had a quality of duty running underneath them, like rebar, supportive but structural, not warm. This was just warm. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." She didn't make a thing of it. That was another thing he was learning about her. She didn't make things into things. She just moved through the world with this quiet steadiness, doing what needed doing, and then moving on. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. She glanced at him sideways. "Depends how personal." "The store. Harper's Books." He paused. "Did you name it after yourself or after someone else?" Something shifted in her face. Small, but there. "My dad," she said. "Robert Harper. He had a store like it in Portland when I was growing up. Nothing fancy, just a room full of second-hand books and a chair by the window where he'd sit and read and talk to anyone who came in." She was quiet for a moment. "He died when I was 24. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to—" She stopped. 6 weeks. "I'm sorry. I came to San Diego for a job after that. Marketing of all things." She gave a small dry laugh. "I was very good at it and hated every minute of it. And then one day I walked past this empty storefront on Grape Street and I thought I could just do this instead." Just like that. Just like that. My savings, a small business loan, and a complete absence of common sense. She tilted her head. It's been 6 years. I have not gotten rich. I have also not hated a single minute of it. That's worth something, Ethan said. That's worth everything, she said. And for a moment, she sounded completely certain in a way that made something in his chest do that thing again. The squeeze. The tightening. He was starting to think that might just be what she did to him. And he was starting to think that wasn't necessarily a problem. Then the gate opened, and Mia came out, and the afternoon moved forward the way afternoons do. And Ethan drove home with his daughter and made dinner and helped with homework and did not say a word to anyone about the coffee or the dead father or the empty storefront on Grape Street. But he thought about all of it for a long time after Mia was asleep. It was Marcus, inevitably, who pushed him. They were finishing a site review on a Friday afternoon, just the two of them standing in the trailer with blueprints spread out on the fold-up table. Marcus had been watching him with that calm, knowing patience he deployed when he had something to say, and was waiting for the right moment to say it. "You called her yet?" Marcus asked. Ethan didn't look up from the blueprints. "I don't have her number." "You could get it. I see her at school pickup." "That's not the same thing, and you know it." Ethan rolled up the blueprint, set it aside. "Marcus, I'm just saying." "You're always just saying." "Because you're never just doing." Marcus crossed his arms. "Ethan, look at me." He looked. "How long has it been since you did something for yourself, not for Mia, not for the firm, for you?" Ethan opened his mouth. "And don't say the gym," Marcus said. "The gym doesn't count. The gym is maintenance." Ethan closed his mouth. "You're allowed to want something," Marcus said. It was very quiet when he said it, very direct, the way Marcus said things that mattered. "You know that, right? You're allowed." Ethan looked at the blueprints on the table, at his own hands, at the faded line on his left ring finger that had stopped being visible about 18 months after the funeral, but that he still noticed sometimes in certain light. "I don't know if I remember how," he said finally. "That's honest. It doesn't feel like enough. It's a start." Marcus unfolded himself from the chair. "Ask her for coffee. Not school pickup coffee. Actual sit-down, I'd like to know you better coffee. Worst thing she says is no." "What if she says no? Then at least you know." He picked up his jacket. "Better than standing outside a school fence every Thursday wondering." He almost talked himself out of it 6 times. The first time was in the truck on the way to school pickup that Thursday when he spent 15 minutes cycling through. Reasons it was a bad idea, he was too busy. She was probably seeing someone. Mia was already attached to her, and it would be awkward if it went wrong. He didn't even know what he was doing. What was he doing? This was. The second time was walking from the truck to the fence. The third through 6th times were standing at the fence waiting for her to come out. But then she was there, green jacket, canvas tote, and she walked up and said, "You look like you're doing math in your head." And without thinking, he said, "I'm trying to figure out how to ask you to get coffee." Sophie stopped. Just for a second. Her expression didn't collapse into anything, no visible flustering, no immediate reaction. She just went still, and looked at him steadily, and he had the unsettling sensation of being read very carefully. "Coffee," she said. "Coffee. Saturday morning, if you want. There's that place on India Street, the one with the—" He stopped. "I'm making this complicated. I'd like to sit somewhere and talk to you that isn't the school fence. That's the whole ask." The corner of her mouth moved. "Not the school fence. Big upgrade. I'm working with what I have." "What about Mia?" "She goes to her friend Zoe's every other Saturday. This is one of the Saturdays." "So you've been planning this?" "I've been thinking about it," he said. "Planning implies I had a strategy. I have no strategy. I have coffee and the hope that you don't have anything else going on." Sophie looked at him for one more long moment. He held it. He was very aware that this was the part where it could go either way, where 4 years of careful load-bearing structure could either hold or do something he couldn't predict. 10 a.m., she said. I need to open the store at noon. 10 a.m. He nodded. Yeah, that works. Don't be late. I'm never late. You were 7 minutes early to pick up 3 weeks in a row. That's... He started, then stopped. That's fair. She smiled. Then that real one, the one from the photograph, the one that took her whole face, and turned toward the gate as the kids started pouring out. Ethan stood very still for 1 second and thought, okay. He was 8 minutes early to the coffee place on India Street. He got a table by the window and ordered a black coffee and had approximately 9 minutes to sit there alone and wonder what he was doing before Sophie walked in. She was wearing a dark sweater, and her hair was loose, and she carried herself the way she always did without performing anything without trying to arrive. She just arrived. You're early again, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. Occupational habit. I'm always the first one on site. Does this count as a site? It counts as something. She ordered tea. He learned she didn't drink coffee, never had, couldn't stand the taste of it, which made the paper cup at school pick up even funnier in retrospect. You gave me coffee, he said. You hate coffee. I don't hate it, I just don't drink it. I know what people look like when they need it. She wrapped both hands around her mug. You looked like you needed it. I've been told I look like that a lot. You do. She said it gently, not as criticism. You look like someone who's been running on necessity for a long time. Ethan looked at her. Mia's mom died 4 years ago, he said. He hadn't planned to say it that early, that directly. It just came out the way things did sometimes with her. Car accident. She was 31. Sophie didn't flinch from it. She didn't immediately fill the air with sympathy noise the way people sometimes did the "oh God, I'm so sorries" that were real, but made him feel like he had to manage their reaction. She just held it. Let it sit. What was she like? Sophie asked. No one asked that anymore. In the first year people had. But 4 years out, people mostly steered around it as if asking would remind him, as if he ever forgot. She was loud, Ethan said, and then he smiled slightly because that was the honest answer. She laughed like she was trying to make sure the people 3 blocks away could hear it. She had opinions about everything: restaurant orders, driving routes, the right way to load a dishwasher. She argued with podcasts, out loud, alone in the car. He paused. She was the most alive person I ever knew. She sounds wonderful. She was a pain in the ass. He said it with complete affection. Wonderful too, but mostly a pain in the ass. He looked at his coffee. Mia got the eyes, and the head tilt when she's thinking hard, and the stubbornness. I can see the stubbornness, Sophie said. She gets it from both sides. Sophie laughed, just a little small and warm. Tell me about the construction work, she said, then shifting weight the way good conversationalists do, not away from the heavy thing, but alongside it, making room for both. How did you end up building things? And Ethan, who could not remember the last time someone had asked him about himself and genuinely meant to listen to the answer, took a breath and told her. An hour and a half later, they were still at the table. Her noon opening had come up twice in conversation and been mutually ignored both times. A second round of drinks had appeared without either of them deciding to leave. The Saturday morning crowd had cycled through the coffee shop around them and they hadn't noticed. He had learned she'd grown up in Portland. One older brother now in Seattle, 2 kids of his own. She'd had a serious relationship end badly about 3 years ago. She didn't give details, and he didn't ask. But she said, he wasn't a bad person. We just wanted completely different things and took too long figuring that out, with the careful flatness of someone who had processed something thoroughly. She read everything: literary fiction, history narrative, nonfiction, occasionally romance novels, which she said she was not remotely embarrassed about. She had a cat named Gerald, who she described as genuinely mean to everyone except me, and one specific customer at the store who comes in every Tuesday. She had learned his father was a Finnish carpenter in Phoenix who'd taught him that the way you build something reveals your character. He'd played baseball through college and blown out his shoulder junior year and switched his major from kinesiology to engineering in what he described as a motivated pivot. He still had Dana's flea market dishes, the remaining ones in the cabinet, and used them every day because Mia liked them. He hadn't been on a real vacation in 4 years. He had read exactly 2 books in the last 12 months, both on his phone, both forgotten. 2 books, Sophie said. She looked genuinely stricken. I know. That's... She seemed to search for the right word. That's a cry for help. You said that about the protein bar. I'm sensing a theme. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, chin in her hand. What did you used to read before? Before. He turned the word over. Dana used to say I read like I was racing someone. She'd find me at midnight on a Tuesday 3/4 through something. I liked the ones where normal people end up in impossible situations and you find out what they're made of. He paused. Character under pressure stuff. I know exactly what to give you. I'm not coming in to buy something. I didn't say buy, I said give. She sat back. Come by the store sometime this week. I'll have something on the counter for you. You don't have to. Ethan. She looked at him directly. I own a bookstore. Giving people books is the part of my life that makes the most sense. Let me do the part of my life that makes the most sense. He looked at her for a moment. That steadiness she had, that particular quality of knowing herself, not performing confidence, but just being settled, did something to him that he was running out of ways to explain away. Okay, he said. Thank you. You're welcome. She checked her phone. I'm 40 minutes late opening. I'm sorry. I'm not. She stood up, pulled on her jacket. This was... She paused on the word, as if choosing it carefully. This was good. Yeah, Ethan said. It was. She left first. He sat for another minute, coffee long cold in front of him, and looked out the window at the Saturday morning street people, with dogs, a couple holding hands, a kid on a bike, and felt something that took him a moment to identify. He felt like himself. Not a version of himself carved down to function. Not the engineer, not the widower, not the single dad running on protein bars and 6 hours of sleep. Just himself, the person he'd been before necessity had become his entire operating system. He left a bigger tip than the bill warranted and walked out into the Saturday morning. He went to the bookstore on Wednesday. He almost didn't. He built a solid case for being too busy. And it was a genuine case. There was a lot going on with the Rosecrans timeline. But by Wednesday afternoon, he found himself driving down Kettner with the excuse that he needed to pick something up at the hardware store on the same block, which was also true and also completely beside the point. The store was quiet. Mid-afternoon on a Wednesday, it held 2 customers and the guy with glasses behind the counter who Ethan was starting to recognize. She left something for you, the guy said before Ethan could say a word. You're Ethan, right? She said, tall, looks like he hasn't slept since 2022. That's accurate. The guy handed him a paperback from under the counter. No bag, no receipt. Just the book, a small sticky note on the cover. Ethan looked at the sticky note. It said, start at chapter 3 if you want to be grabbed immediately. Or start at the beginning if you're the kind of person who does things properly. S. He stood in the middle of the bookstore and read that note twice. Then he looked up, and the guy with glasses was watching him with the particular expression of someone who had been briefed. She said, don't try to pay for it, the guy said. Of course she did. She also said... He paused, consulting something on his phone. She also said, and I'm quoting, if he looks like he wants to argue about it, tell him the book is non-negotiable, but coffee is optional. Ethan looked at the book in his hand, then at the guy. She scripted this out. She wrote it down at 8 this morning. He shrugged. She knew you'd come in today. How did she know that? The guy smiled. She said you seem like a Wednesday person. Ethan didn't know what a Wednesday person was. He also inexplicably felt that it was correct. He started at the beginning that night after Mia was asleep. He read until 1 a.m. He hadn't done that in 4 years. Thursday pickup, Sophie was at the fence before him for the first time. "Chapter 3 is better," she said the second he walked up. "You said start at the beginning if you do things properly." "I know what I said. I was testing you." "Did I pass?" She looked at him sideways. "Jury's still out." But she was smiling. They stood together while the wind moved through the eucalyptus trees and the school bell rang somewhere inside the building, and Ethan thought, this is the thing I didn't know I was missing. Not romance, not rescue, not some cinematic before and after. Just this. A person who hands you a book with a note and knows you'll come on a Wednesday. A person who brings you coffee when you look like you need it, even when she doesn't drink it herself. "Sophie," he said. Mia's school is doing a beach day next weekend. Charity thing they asked parents to come." He kept his eyes on the gate. "I thought maybe—" "Yes," she said. He turned. She was already looking at him. Calm. Settled. "Sure." "You didn't let me finish," he said. "I know what you were going to ask." "How?" "Because you're a Wednesday person," she said simply. "And Wednesday people always finish what they start." The gate opened. Mia came flying out, spotted Sophie first, and detoured hard in her direction like a heat-seeking missile. Ethan watched his daughter throw herself at a woman he'd met a month ago, and felt something in him settle like concrete, finally curing, slow, quiet, certain. Not fixed, not healed, but heading somewhere. And for a man who had spent 4 years with his head down, just keeping the structure standing, that was everything. The beach day was a Saturday. Ethan knew it the moment he woke up that morning. That particular quality of awareness, the kind where your body registers something before your brain catches up. He lay in the dark for a moment, staring at the ceiling, and identified it the way you identify a sound you haven't heard in years' anticipation. Not anxiety. Not the braced, preemptive tension of someone waiting for something to go wrong. Actual anticipation. The forward-leaning kind. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt it. He got up, started coffee, and stood in the kitchen in the quiet while the machine ran. Mia wouldn't be up for another hour. He had time to think, which was either a gift or a problem, depending on the morning. This morning he let himself think. He thought about the book Sophie had given him, which he had now finished at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, sitting in the kitchen with cold coffee, trying to slow down because he didn't want it to be over. He thought about the sticky note he'd kept, which was currently between the pages on his nightstand. Slightly ridiculous, and he knew it was ridiculous, and he kept it anyway. He thought about the way she'd said yes before he could finish asking, calm and certain, and how that certainty had landed in him like something structural, like a beam sliding into place. He thought, be careful. Then he thought, no. Stop being careful. You've been careful for 4 years. Look what careful costs. He poured his coffee and got ready for the day. Mia was dressed and at the door 12 minutes before they needed to leave, which was a record. She had her swimsuit on under her clothes, her towel rolled up under her arm, and the focused energy of someone with a specific mission. "Do you think Ms. Sophie is already there?" she asked. She said she was helping set up, so probably. "What time did she get there?" "I don't know, Bug." "Did you text her?" Ethan looked at his daughter, 7 years old, and interrogating him like a seasoned detective. "I told her we'd see her there." Mia considered this with visible skepticism. "You could have texted her. We're leaving in 10 minutes. You have time to text." "Mia, I'm just saying." "I know you're just saying." He handed her the sunscreen. "Put this in the bag." She took it, then looked up at him with those dark, thoughtful eyes that saw too much. "Dad," she said in the particular tone she used when she was about to say something important. "Are you nervous?" "I'm not nervous." "You made the coffee twice." "The first pot didn't taste right." You said it tasted fine. Mia. Bag. Sunscreen. Let's go. She went satisfied with herself in the way only a child who has caught an adult in something can be. Ethan stood in the kitchen for one more second, looked at his phone, and did not text Sophie. Then he texted Sophie. Leaving now. Mia is already operating at full intensity. The reply came back in under a minute. Tell her the good beach chairs go fast. That should help. He smiled at his phone like an idiot and put it in his pocket. He heard Mia before he saw Sophie. That wasn't unusual. Mia had a volume setting that cut through ambient noise like a foghorn. But this was different. He was carrying the cooler from the parking area down toward the sand, working through the crowd of school families and volunteers, and he heard Mia's laugh, her real one. Full body, the Dana laugh. And when he looked up and found the source of it, Sophie was crouching on the sand next to her, both of them examining something cupped in Mia's hands. A shell probably. Or a rock. With Mia, it could be either. Sophie looked up and found him at almost the same moment. She stood. She was wearing board shorts and a loose linen shirt over her swimsuit, hair pulled back, and she was squinting slightly against the sun. You made it, she said. I said we would. I know. She stopped, shook her head, slightly smiled. I'm glad. Mia held up whatever was in her hands. Dad, look. It's a sand dollar, a whole one. Don't drop it. I'm not going to drop it. She looked at Sophie. He thinks I drop things. I've seen you drop things, Ethan said. I drop some things, not important things. Sophie put a hand over her mouth, not quite hiding the laugh. The morning moved the way good mornings do without effort. There was a beach cleanup portion which Mia took extremely seriously, and a volleyball net the older kids claimed, and a long table of food that the PTA had organized with their usual terrifying efficiency. Ethan helped carry equipment, talked to a few other parents he vaguely knew from pickup, and periodically tracked Mia across the sand the way parents do peripheral automatic, the constant low-frequency radar. Sophie was everywhere. That was just what she was, the kind of person who moves through a group and leaves each person in it feeling like they were the one she most wanted to talk to. He watched her work and thought about what Mia had said back at the beginning. She's always there for everybody else. He understood it better now. It wasn't martyrdom. It wasn't people-pleasing. She just genuinely cared in a way that had become so habitual she probably didn't notice it anymore. He wondered if anyone had ever pointed that out to her. He wondered if he was the right person to do it. Around noon, he found himself beside her at the food table, both of them loading plates in the brief lull between waves of people. You've talked to every single person here, he said. That's not true. I've been watching. She glanced at him. That's not weird at all. I just mean you do this thing. You make people feel like you were waiting specifically for them to show up. He put a sandwich on his plate. Do you know you do that? Sophie was quiet for a moment. My dad did it, she said. In the store. Every person who came in, he'd act like they were the most interesting thing that had happened all day, even when they weren't. She paused. Especially when they weren't actually. He said the people who don't expect to be interesting are always the most interesting. Ethan looked at her. Robert Harper sounds like he was something. He really was. Her voice was easy when she said it, sad, underneath the way it always is when you love someone who's gone but not raw. Processed. Carried well. I think about him in the store a lot. What he'd think of it. What would he think? He'd say the fiction section is overcrowded and the history section needs more women. She smiled. He'd be right on both counts. What else? She looked at him sideways. Why? I want to know. She considered that for a moment, plate in hand, the noise of the beach around them. He'd like the regulars, she said finally. Gerald the mean cat. He'd love the mean cat. He always liked creatures with opinions. She paused. And he'd like... She stopped. What? He'd like that I'm happy, she said quietly. He worried about me being lonely. I think that would ease him. Are you? Ethan asked. Happy. She turned and looked at him directly, then one of those looks that she had, the ones that didn't deflect and didn't perform. More than I was 6 months ago, she said. Yes. He held that, didn't push it further, just let it be what it was. It was Mia who made the afternoon complicated. Not on purpose, that was the thing about Mia. She never caused trouble on purpose. She caused it through the particular genius of a 7-year-old who said the true thing at the most revealing possible moment. It happened around 2 in the afternoon. Ethan and Sophie were sitting on a piece of driftwood a little way from the main group, watching the kids play in the shallower water. Mia was out there with her classmates, the sand dollar safely wrapped in a paper towel in Ethan's jacket pocket. The afternoon had settled into something easy. They were talking about nothing particularly important. The comfortable kind of conversation that only happens when two people have gotten past the first layer of politeness. And then Mia came running up, dripping, and planted herself in front of Sophie with the focused intensity she brought to all important matters. "Ms. Sophie," she said, catching her breath. "Tyler Marsh says his mom says you used to date someone famous. Is that true?" Ethan made a face. "Mia." "I'm just asking." Sophie, to her credit, didn't miss a beat. "Tyler Marsh's mom should maybe not say everything she thinks." "So it's true." "It's complicated." Mia absorbed this with the look of someone filing information away for later. Then, "Do you want to have kids someday?" "Mia." Ethan's voice had a warning in it now. "It's a normal question." "It's not a, it's okay." Sophie put a hand briefly on Ethan's arm, just a touch a second, and looked at Mia. "That's a personal question, Mia." "I know. But I want to know." "Why?" Mia looked between the two of them with those dark, unnerving eyes. "Because," she said with the complete logical transparency of a child, "you're my dad's friend now, and I want to know if you're the kind of person who wants a family." The silence that followed was the kind you could feel. Ethan was aware of Sophie beside him, and aware of his own heartbeat, and aware of his 7-year-old standing in front of him, dripping salt water, and somehow having just asked the most specific possible question in the most public possible way. Sophie looked at Mia for a long moment. Then she said quietly and seriously, as if answering an equal, "Yes, I'm the kind of person who wants a family." Mia nodded, satisfied. "Okay," she said, and ran back into the water. Ethan stared after her. Sophie stared after her. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "Don't be." "She does that. She says the thing." "I know." Something in Sophie's voice had shifted, softer. "She's extraordinary, Ethan. She's a menace. She's both." A pause. "She just wanted to know if I was serious." "Are you—" He hadn't meant to say it out loud. It came out before the part of him that was careful could catch it. Sophie turned and looked at him, full on. The afternoon light was behind her, and the ocean was loud, and the rest of the beach felt very far away. "That's the most direct thing you've ever said to me," she said. "I know." "Do you want a direct answer?" "Yes." "Then yes," Sophie said. "I'm serious." Ethan looked at her. His hands were on his knees, his shoulders slightly forward, and he was aware that he was holding his breath and made himself stop. "I haven't done this in a long time," he said. "I don't know how well I remember the mechanics." "There aren't mechanics. There's a lot of things. There's Mia. He stopped. "There's Dana. Not as a comparison. She's not a comparison. But she's part of it. I know she is. You're not bothered by that." Sophie looked out at the water where Mia was laughing at something with her classmates. "I'm not in competition with anyone," she said. "I wouldn't want to be. Who you were with her, who you were in that's part of who you are now. Part of why Mia is who she is." She paused. I don't want to replace anything. I just want to be what I am. Ethan let out a long breath. What are you? He asked. I'm someone who thinks you've been carrying too much alone for too long, she said. And I'm someone who'd like to help carry some of it, if you'd let me. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, That's the most direct thing you've ever said to me. Seems like the day for it. By late afternoon, the crowd had thinned. The cleanup was done. The kids were sun-tired and sugar-crashed, and draped across towels and parents' laps in various states of fading. Mia was asleep against Ethan's side, the sand dollar in her loose fist, her face completely relaxed in the way it only was when she was out cold. Sophie sat on the other side of him. Not touching, just close. Close enough that he was aware of it, that particular spatial awareness that only happens with certain people. I need to tell you something, Ethan said. Okay. The first time I saw you, it was a photograph, on my phone, by accident. He kept his voice low so as not to wake Mia. I was going through parent group emails, and I hit the wrong thing, and this photo album opened, and the first picture was, it was you, at the beach, laughing. Sophie was very still beside him. I closed it fast, he said. I felt like an idiot, but I couldn't. He stopped. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because of it wasn't because of what you looked like. I mean, you looked... He paused because that particular sentence had a direction he hadn't fully planned. It was the laugh, he said. It was that you were laughing like nobody was watching. Because nobody was, Sophie said softly. I know. That's the thing. He looked at her. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen anyone laugh like that, like nothing was being performed, like they were just... He searched for it. Like they were just living. Sophie said nothing, but she was looking at him. I'm not saying the photo is why any of this happened, Ethan said. I'm saying it's why I started paying attention. And then everything else. He gestured vaguely at the beach at the school gate in memory, at the coffee and the book and the sticky note. Everything else is what made me care. Sophie took a slow breath. Why are you telling me this now? Because you told Mia you were serious, he said. And I figured if you could be honest with a 7-year-old, I could be honest with you. She turned and looked at him fully. Her expression was open in a way he was starting to recognize the face she had when she wasn't managing anything, when she'd let the careful steadiness drop, and there was just her underneath it, real and uncertain and present. You've been thinking about me since a beach cleanup photograph, she said. I know how that sounds. It sounds... She stopped. Something moved through her face. It sounds like the most human thing anyone has told me in years. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Sophie said very quietly, I saw you that first day at the gate. Before Ms. Delgado pointed you out, I saw you come across the parking lot, and I thought... She paused. I thought he looks like someone who's been through something real. That's not exactly flattering. It was, she said. It meant you were actually in it, your life, not floating above it. She paused. I've known a lot of people who float, men especially. They keep everything distant, so nothing can touch them. She looked at him steadily. You're not doing that. I was, he said. For years I was. And now... He looked down at Mia asleep against his side, at the sand dollar in her hand, at the beach going golden in the late light, at Sophie beside him. Now I'm not sure I remember how to float, he said, and I'm not sure I want to. He walked her to her car after. Mia was half awake, shuffling between them, with her towel around her shoulders, holding Ethan's hand on one side, and spontaneously and without announcement reaching up and taking Sophie's on the other. None of them commented on it. At Sophie's car, Mia was awake enough to hug her fierce and unself-conscious, and Sophie held on like she meant it. Then Mia climbed in the back seat and was asleep again before the door closed. Ethan stood with Sophie at the driver's side. "Thank you for today," he said. "Thank you. I mean it. It was—" He searched for it. "It was the best day I've had in a long time." Sophie looked at him. "Me too," she said simply. He didn't kiss her. He thought about it, was aware of how close they were standing, of the specific weight of the afternoon, but it wasn't the right moment. That wasn't careful. That was just right. Some things have their own timing, and Ethan had learned the hard way to tell the difference between the right moment and the easy one. Instead, he said, "Next Saturday, dinner, me and Mia. Nothing fancy, she'll want pasta, but I'd like you to be there." Sophie smiled. The real one. "Is this you with a strategy this time?" "I'm learning," he said. She got in her car. He watched her pull out of the parking lot, and then stood there for a second in the fading afternoon, the salt smell of the ocean behind him, the sound of Mia's breathing through the half-open window of his truck. He thought about a photograph, about a laugh that had nothing performing in it, about a woman who handed a stranger coffee she didn't drink herself, and scripted out book handoffs and shook a 7-year-old's hand as if it were a formal agreement. He thought, "I have not felt like this in 4 years." And then quieter Dana would have liked her. He got in the truck. Drove home through the orange evening. Didn't say much. Mia didn't either. She surfaced once to ask if Ms. Sophie was coming to dinner next week, and when he said yes, she made a small, satisfied sound and went back to sleep. Ethan drove, and somewhere in his chest, in the space where 4 years of careful load-bearing grief had lived, something was quietly making room. The pasta dinner was spaghetti with meat sauce, which Mia had requested with the specificity of someone placing a catering order, not the jar kind, Dad the real kind. And Ethan had spent 40 minutes on a Sunday afternoon making sauce from scratch for the first time in approximately 3 years, following a recipe Dana had written on an index card that was still stuck to the inside of the cabinet door with a piece of electrical tape gone brittle at the edges. He stood there reading her handwriting and let himself feel it for a minute. Just a minute. The particular weight of the familiar. The way she'd written garlic with a small star next to it, because she always wanted more than the recipe called for. Then he put the card back, reached for the garlic, and used more than it called for. Sophie arrived at 6:15 with a bottle of sparkling water and a book for Mia. A slim hardcover about a girl who befriends a whale, and Mia grabbed both with the undiscriminating enthusiasm of a golden retriever greeting its favorite person. Ethan watched from the kitchen doorway, dish towel over his shoulder, and felt the particular strangeness of seeing someone new standing in his apartment. The space had been his and Mia's for 4 years. Every corner of it was calibrated to the two of them. Mia's drawings held to the fridge with alphabet magnets, the stack of engineering journals on the coffee table that never quite made it to the shelf, Dana's remaining dishes in the cabinet. Having someone else in it felt like hearing a new instrument in a song you thought you knew all the parts of. Not wrong, just different. Adjusting. "It smells incredible," Sophie said, coming toward the kitchen. "Don't look at the stove. It's controlled chaos." She looked immediately. "That's not chaos. That's just a lot of pots. 2 pots is a lot for me. How do you feed a child? Efficiently." He handed her a glass. Pasta, grilled cheese, scrambled eggs, and breakfast burritos. Mia's complete dietary universe. "What about vegetables?" "She eats carrots if I call them something else." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "What do you call them?" "Orange sticks." He said it without embarrassment, which told her more about 4 years of single parenthood than anything else could have. "Don't judge me." She put both hands up. "I respect the strategy completely." Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway holding the whale book. "Ms. Sophie, can I read this during dinner?" "Mia," Ethan started. "She can if she wants," Sophie said, then caught Ethan's look. "Or your dad's rule." "No books at the table," Mia said, heavy with tragedy. "It's a very strict rule." "All the best rules are strict," Sophie said. Mia considered this. "Do you have rules?" "In the store, yes. No eating near the old books. No putting books back in the wrong section, even if you're in a hurry. And if you recommend a book to someone and they hate it, you have to own it. What does that mean, own it? It means you say, I thought it was great. I understand why you didn't. I'm sorry, let me try again. Mia stared at her. That's a really good rule. Thank you. Dad doesn't apologize when he recommends bad movies. Ethan pointed a wooden spoon at his daughter. I have never recommended a bad movie. The submarine one. That's a classic. It was 3 hours long, and nothing exploded until the very end. Mia, I'm just saying. Sophie pressed her lips together very carefully and looked at the ceiling. Dinner was loud in the way Ethan had forgotten dinner could be. Not the loud of obligation or performance, but the kind that comes from 3 people who were all actually present. Mia held court on the subject of her class hamster Gerald Jr., who had escaped his cage twice that week and been found once under the reading rug and once inexplicably inside a student's boot. Sophie told a story about a customer at the store who had come in every Tuesday for 2 years asking for the same book that was always checked out, because, as it turned out, a different regular was the one who kept borrowing it. And when Sophie finally introduced them, they had been arguing by note in the margins of the book for 18 months without knowing it. They're friends now, she said. They come in together on Tuesdays. That's a love story, Mia said, mouthful of pasta. Don't talk with your mouth full, Ethan said. It might be a love story, Sophie allowed. They haven't confirmed. I'm going to write a book about them, Mia announced. You should, Sophie said. I'll sell it in the store. She's 7, Ethan said. Both of them looked at him. I'm just noting, he said. After dinner, Mia read on the couch while Ethan and Sophie did the dishes, not by arrangement, just by the natural gravity of 2 adults after a meal falling into the easy division of it without discussion. He washed, she dried, and they talked in the low-key murmuring way of people who had gotten comfortable enough to not need to perform conversation, and Ethan was aware of how natural it was, how it didn't feel like effort, how his apartment, which had been a structure he maintained, and nothing more, felt like something else tonight. Can I ask you something? Sophie said, drying a plate. Yeah? The index card on the cabinet. She nodded toward it. Is that Dana's handwriting? He handed her another plate. Her sauce recipe. I used it tonight. I thought it tasted... She paused, choosing carefully. It tasted like someone loved it when they made it. He looked at her. I mean the recipe, she said. The care in it, the garlic. She always wanted more garlic. Smart woman. She was. He handed her the last pot. I hope that's okay, using her recipe. I wasn't sure if that was... Ethan. Sophie set the pot down and turned to face him properly. Stop, it's okay, more than okay. She held his gaze. She was Mia's mom. She was your wife. She gets to be in this kitchen. She's allowed to be here. He had not expected that. He felt it land somewhere deep and complicated the way true things do when you've been bracing against them. He looked at his hands on the counter for a second, getting himself level. Thank you, he said. You don't have to keep thanking me for things that are just true. I know. I'm still going to. She smiled and picked up the pot to dry it. They finished the dishes in a comfortable quiet that felt like its own kind of conversation. Mia was asleep by 8:30, the whale book on her chest, one arm around Peanut. Ethan stood in the doorway of her room for a moment he always did, just a second just to see her chest rise and fall and confirm the basic ongoing miracle of her, then pulled the door mostly closed. Sophie was on the couch, legs tucked under her, looking at the framed photos on the bookshelf. He'd noticed her noticing them throughout the evening, the way her eyes moved to them, and then away, not intrusively, just aware. He sat down beside her. She's incredible, Sophie said, quiet so as not to carry to the bedroom. I know. She looks like you around the jaw and the forehead, but her eyes are... Dana. They're extraordinary eyes. She knows how to use them, Ethan said. She gets what she wants 60% of the time on the eyes alone. I'm trying not to reinforce it, but it's hard. Sophie laughed. Then she went quiet for a moment, still looking at the photos. Do you mind if I ask, what was it like? The first year. Not a morbid question, not prurient, just real. The way Sophie asked things, like she actually wanted to know and trusted him to tell her. He thought about it. The first year it was like trying to read a map that was printed wrong, he said finally. You know how things are supposed to work, you know the shape of a day, but everything you reach for is slightly not where it should be. And you're doing it with a 3-year-old who knows something is wrong but doesn't have the language for it. He looked at the photos. Mia asked me about 6 months after why Mama didn't come home, and I told her as simply as I knew how that Mama got hurt and her body stopped working and she wasn't coming back. And Mia thought about it for a while and then asked if Mama was lonely. Sophie made a soft sound. I said no, Ethan said. I said she wasn't lonely. She was with all the people she loved from before who had gone the same way. I made it up. I don't know if I believe in that, but I wanted Mia to have it. He paused. She seemed to accept it. She talks about Dana sometimes like that, like she's somewhere specific that's just hard to get to. Not gone, just far. That's a healthy way for a child to carry it. I think it's how Mia decided to carry it, he said. I didn't teach her that. She made sense of it her own way. She's been doing that since she was born. She figured things out faster than I expected and on her own terms. He looked at Sophie. She figured you out in about 2 weeks, by the way. What do you mean? The first week she just liked you. The second week she started asking questions. By week 3, she'd apparently made a decision. The handshake, Sophie said. The handshake. Sophie was quiet for a moment. What about you? She asked. When did you make a decision? Ethan looked at her. Which kind of decision? The kind where you stopped arguing with yourself. He almost smiled. Saturday, at the beach. When you told Mia yes. That's what did it. The fact that you answered her seriously, he said. You didn't brush her off. You didn't give her a child version answer. You told her the truth. He paused. That's when I knew. Sophie looked at her hands. Something had shifted in her face, that open, unguarded thing he'd only seen a few times. I should tell you something, she said. Okay. The guy. The relationship I mentioned 3 years ago. She paused. We were together 4 years. I thought we were building something. He decided we weren't, or decided he wanted something different. I never got the full translation. She was careful, steady, but he could hear the old weight underneath it. I took it badly. Not just the breakup, the 4 years. Feeling like I'd misjudged something so fundamentally. Like my judgment about people was broken. She looked up. I spent a long time after that being very careful, very contained, doing all the community stuff, the store, the volunteering, putting the energy somewhere I could control. She paused. It was useful. It was also a way of not being available for anything real. Until, Ethan said, until a man started showing up 7 minutes early to school pickup and looking at me like he was trying to solve something. I wasn't. You were, she said. It's okay. It was actually the right look, like I was worth figuring out. Ethan held that for a moment. Then he said, You are. Sophie turned and looked at him. The apartment was quiet, Mia asleep down the hall. The city sounds distant and low outside the window. The photographs on the shelf. Dana's recipe card in the cabinet. He reached out and took Sophie's hand. Not a dramatic gesture, just that. Just his hand over hers on the couch cushion between them. She looked down at it. Then she turned her hand over and held his back. They sat like that for a while, not saying anything, and Ethan thought about structures. About what it took to build something that lasted. About his father telling him once, standing in a half-finished house in Phoenix, that the bones were what mattered, that you could change everything else, the walls, the windows, the trim. But if the bones were right, what you built on them would hold. He thought the bones are right. It didn't stay simple. Nothing real ever did. It was Marcus who told him about the conversation 2 weeks after the dinner. They were on site Tuesday morning, and Marcus had that expression, the one that meant he was carrying something and waiting for the right moment. "I ran into Tom Gifford at the parking garage yesterday," Marcus said. Ethan kept walking. Tom Gifford was the senior partner at the firm. "Okay." He mentioned the Harborview project. Ethan stopped. The Harborview project was a contract that had been circling for 8 months, the largest marine infrastructure bid the firm had ever chased. If they won it, it was 2 years of work. A team expansion. A promotion for Ethan from senior engineer to project director. "He said they're close to a decision," Marcus said. "But Harborview wants the lead engineer on site in Santa Barbara for the first 14 months of the build. Not commuting." There. Ethan said nothing. "Full relocation package," Marcus continued. "It's a significant opportunity. Gifford wants to talk to you this week." Ethan stood very still in the middle of the job site. He thought about Mia's school, about Mrs. Calloway with the bad knees, about Sophie's store on Grape Street with the hand-painted letters, about Thursday pickups and Saturday coffee and a sticky note between pages on his nightstand. 14 months, he said. Could extend to 22. The wind off the bay was cold. Ethan looked at the water in the distance, gray and flat and indifferent. When does Gifford need an answer? End of the month. He didn't tell Sophie that night, or the next. He told himself it wasn't the right moment, that he needed to think it through first, that it wasn't fair to bring her into a decision that wasn't made. All of that was true. None of it was why he didn't tell her. He didn't tell her because telling her would make it real, and making it real would mean looking directly at something he wasn't ready to look at, the intersection of what he'd built for himself professionally over 4 grinding years, and what he was just now tentatively starting to build with her. Mia noticed, of course. "You're doing the thing," she said on Wednesday morning over cereal. "What thing?" "The quiet thinking thing, where you're here, but you're not here." "I'm right here, Bug." "You haven't heard anything I've said for 10 minutes. He looked at her. "I heard about the hamster. That was yesterday." "I'm sorry." He put his spoon down. "I have a work decision I'm working through." Mia looked at him with Dana's eyes, careful and direct. "Does it affect us?" He hated and loved her for cutting straight to it. "Maybe. I don't know yet." "Does it affect Ms. Sophie?" "Mia." "That means yes," she said. He looked at his daughter across the breakfast table, 7 years old, reading him with the accuracy of a decade's worth of practice. "I don't have all the information yet," he said. "When I do, you'll be the first person I talk to about it. Before Ms. Sophie, you're my daughter. You're always first." Mia was quiet for a moment, turning her spoon in her bowl. "Dad," she said, "whatever it is, you should tell her." "I will." "Soon," Mia said. "She doesn't like it when people don't tell her things. I can tell." She looked up. She's the kind of person who'd rather know something hard than not know it. He stared at his daughter. "How do you know that?" "Because she's like you," Mia said simply, and went back to her cereal. He went to the bookstore Thursday afternoon. Not a casual visit, he went with intention, parked down the block, sat in the truck for 2 minutes, and then went in. Sophie was alone behind the counter, rearranging a display of new arrivals. She looked up when he came in, and something in her face changed, just slightly, just a flicker, the way it did when she was reading a situation. "You have your work face on," she said. "What does that mean?" "It means something's happening that you haven't said yet." She came around the counter. "Talk to me." So he told her. All of it. The Harborview project, the 14 months, the Santa Barbara relocation, Gifford's timeline. He told it plainly, no softening, the way she'd told him she preferred. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, one hand on the edge of the shelf beside her. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "That's what I'm trying to figure out." "No," she said. "Separate the noise out. What do you want?" He looked at her. "I want both," he said honestly. "I want the project because I've been working towards something like it for 8 years. And He stopped. "I don't want to leave this. What's here? What's starting?" Sophie looked at him steadily. "How long have we been whatever we are? 6 weeks, 7 maybe." "7 weeks," she said. "Ethan, you can't make a career decision around 7 weeks." "I know that." "And I'm not going anywhere," she said quietly. "I have a store. I have roots here. I'm not a situation you have to solve before you leave." Something moved behind her eyes, firm but careful. "I'm also not a reason to turn down something that matters to you professionally. You're not just—" "I know I'm not. That's not what I said." She stepped closer. "What I'm saying is, this is too early for you to be carrying this as a choice between me and your career. That's not fair to either of us." She paused. "What does Mia say?" "To tell you." Sophie made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Smart kid." "The smartest person I know." "Then you told me." She held his gaze. "And now I'm telling you, figure out what you need for your career and your daughter. And then tell me what that is. We'll figure out the rest from there." Ethan looked at her. "That simple?" "That simple," she said. "I don't believe in making things complicated because they're scary. Things are complicated enough when they need to be." He reached out and touched her face, just his hand against her jaw, just once, and she went still and let him, and he thought, this is what careful people sound like when they're sure. She was sure. Not about the outcome. About herself. About the two of them being worth the honesty. "Sophie," he said. "Yeah. What we are, I want it to be something specific. Not just whatever this is." He searched for it. "I want to call it something." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then call it something," she said. "I'd like to be with you," he said. "Actually with you. Not school fence adjacent, not bookstore drop-bys. With you." The corner of her mouth moved. "That took you 7 weeks. I told you I don't remember the mechanics." "You're doing fine," she said. And she reached up and covered the hand still against her jaw with her own. "Yes, I'd like that too." He kissed her then. Not cinematic. Just real. Just the two of them in a quiet bookstore on a Thursday afternoon, with the smell of old paper around them, and the sound of traffic outside, both of them slightly unsure, both of them choosing anyway. When they stepped back, Sophie was looking at him, with that face, open, unguarded, present. "Still have to figure out Santa Barbara," he said. "I know. It's not going to be simple. Nothing worth it is." She straightened his jacket lapel with her hand, a small, easy gesture domestic in the best way. "But Ethan, you walked in here today and told me the hard thing instead of the easy thing." She stepped back. "You're already figuring it out." He drove home slower than usual, picked Mia up from Mrs. Calloway's late apologetic, and made eggs for dinner because it was already 7, and he'd missed the window for anything more ambitious. Mia, eating eggs at the kitchen table, looked up at him with studied casualness. "Did you talk to her?" "I did." "And—" He considered how much to tell a 7-year-old. "She said the same thing you did." Mia nodded seriously, as if this was expected. "Because we're both right," she said. "You are," Ethan said. "You both are." Mia went back to her eggs. He stood at the counter and looked at the cabinet door with the index card on it. And then at the kitchen his daughter was sitting in, and then out the window at the dark San Diego evening. He had a decision to make. But for the first time in 4 years, making a decision felt less like load-bearing maintenance and more like choosing. And there was a difference. A real one. He was beginning to remember what that felt like. He met with Tom Gifford on a Friday morning. The office was on the 14th floor of a building on Broadway, with a view of the bay that Ethan had always privately thought was wasted on a conference room. Gifford was 61, silver-haired, the kind of man who had spent 4 decades building things and wore it in the way he sat settled, certain like load-bearing material himself. He liked Ethan, had said so in the direct way of men who didn't bother with indirection at the level he'd reached. He slid the Harborview proposal folder across the table. "You've seen the numbers," Gifford said. It wasn't a question. "I've seen them. Project Director title is yours at the close of Phase 1. The Santa Barbara team is strong. You'd be building on good bones." Gifford leaned back. "This is the one, Ethan. This is the kind of project you tell your grandkids about." Ethan looked at the folder, at the numbers, at the timeline. 14 months, minimum 22 possible. He thought about what that meant in concrete terms, Mia turning 8-9 in a different city. Her school, her friends. Zoe with the Saturday playdates. Mrs. Calloway and her bad knees. The eucalyptus trees along the schoolyard fence. Sophie's store on Grape Street. "Can I ask you something off the record?" Ethan said. Gifford raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "When you took the Coronado Bridge assessment back in '98, your kids were what, 9 and 12? 11 and 14. You moved them." Gifford was quiet for a moment. Something shifted in the older man's face. Not quite surprise, but the look of someone recalibrating what kind of conversation this was going to be. "We did," he said. "Karen was not happy about it for the first 4 months. Then she made a friend and decided it was fine." "Did you regret it?" "I regretted things about it," Gifford said carefully. "The year 2 extension I didn't anticipate. Missing Mark's first varsity game. Karen's school play." He paused. "I don't regret the project, but I'd be lying if I said the math was clean." He looked at Ethan steadily. "This is about your daughter." "Partly." "Partly?" Gifford repeated. He looked at the folder, then back up. "I'm not going to tell you the project is more important than your family, Ethan. I'm also not going to pretend a project director title at 35 happens twice." He picked up his pen. "Take the weekend. Come back Monday with whatever you've decided. Either way, I need a good engineer, and I've got one." Ethan picked up the folder. "I'll be here Monday." He drove to Sophie's store after. Not because he'd planned to. He just ended up on Kettner the way he sometimes did now, the route having become part of his internal geography without his fully sanctioning it. He parked and sat in the truck for a minute, Gifford's voice still in his head. "This is the kind of project you tell your grandkids about." He went inside. Sophie was with a customer, an older woman with white hair who was holding 2 books and conducting what appeared to be a spirited internal debate about which to take. Sophie caught his eye across the store, registered something in his face, and held up one finger. He waited near the history section, running his thumb along the spines without reading any of them. When the customer left with both books, apparently having resolved the debate in favor of abundance, Sophie came over. She didn't say anything for a second, just looked at him. "How was the meeting?" she asked. "He offered me everything I expected. And I took the weekend." Sophie nodded. She turned and straightened a book on the shelf that didn't need straightening, a thing he'd noticed she did when she was thinking. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Since Thursday. Since we talked." "Okay." "I closed the store early last night and sat in the back with Gerald, and I thought about it for 2 hours. She turned back to face him. "I want to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." "Okay," he said. "I meant what I told you. You can't make a career decision around 7 weeks." She paused. "But I also want to be honest with you about what I want, because I told you I would be. And what I want is I want this to continue. I want to keep building whatever we're building. I want to know Mia in 5 years and 10 years. I want—" She stopped, steadied. "I want to be someone you come home to, whatever home looks like." She held his gaze. "So if you take Santa Barbara, I'm not disappearing. I'm not stepping back to make it easier. I will be here in this store, and we will figure out the distance because some things are worth the distance." Ethan looked at her. "Okay," she said. "You can respond." "I'm not taking it," he said. Sophie blinked. "What?" "I called Gifford's assistant on the way here. Left a message that I'd have a different answer Monday than he's expecting." He put his hands in his jacket pockets. "I told him I was passing on the relocation." "Ethan, let me finish," he said. "Same rule." She closed her mouth. "I spent the whole drive thinking I was going to take it," he said. "Because it's the right career move, and I've worked for years toward exactly that kind of project, and everything about it on paper is correct." He paused. "And then I was sitting in the truck outside, and I thought about Mia asking me if it affected us. And I thought about what us meant, and I realized something shifted at some point, without me noticing it shift." "What shifted?" "For 4 years my only definition of us was me and Mia. That was the whole structure. Everything was built around holding that together." He looked at her. "And now us means something bigger. And that didn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen because I needed it to. It happened because of you." He paused. "And I'm not 28. I'm not chasing the biggest project anymore. I'm standing in a bookstore on a Friday afternoon thinking about what home actually means, and it means my daughter in her school and my neighbor with the bad knees and this store on Grape Street and the sticky note on my nightstand that I'm not getting rid of, and—" "Ethan?" "I'm still finishing." She made a small broken sound that was almost a laugh and looked at the floor. "I'm choosing this," he said. "Not because I have to. Because I want to. There's a difference, and I know what that difference feels like now." He looked at her steadily. "I'm choosing you." The store was quiet. Gerald from somewhere in the back made a single sound of profound indifference, which was on brand. Sophie looked up at him. Her eyes were bright, not crying, not quite, but close. "You're a Wednesday person," she said, voice slightly unsteady. "You always do things properly." "Starting at chapter 1, he said. She laughed, and it was the real one. The one from the photograph, the one that had nothing performing in it. The one that had started all of this, and it hit him in exactly the same place it always did, right in the center of the chest, like a beam sliding into place. He crossed the 3 feet between them and kissed her, and she held on to the front of his jacket with both hands. And Gerald walked in from the back, saw them turned around, and walked out again. He told Mia that night, all of it. The meeting. Gifford Santa Barbara, the decision. He sat on the edge of her bed after the story, and before lights out, and he told her plainly and simply, the way she always wanted things told. Mia listened with her head tilted left. Peanut in her lap, the whale book she'd nearly finished on the pillow beside her. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You're not going," she said. "I'm not going." "Because of me. Because of us," he said. "You and me and our life here. That's the reason. And Ms. Sophie." He met his daughter's eyes. "Yes," he said. "And Ms. Sophie." Mia was quiet again. Then, "Are you two? Are you like together, like a real thing?" "Yeah, Bug, it's a real thing." She looked at Peanut for a moment. Then she looked back up with those dark, serious eyes. "Dad," she said carefully, "is that okay? With Mama?" He had known this question was coming. He had thought about how to answer it, worried at it in the dark at midnight, tried different phrasings and discarded them. In the end, he said what was true. "Your mama wanted us to be happy," he said. "Not eventually. Always. She made me promise when things got bad that I wouldn't stop. That I'd keep going and keep our girl whole and let good things in when they came." He paused. "She knew me well enough to make me promise out loud because she knew I'd talk myself out of it otherwise." Mia's chin trembled just barely. "She knew you were going to be dumb about it. She knew I was going to be careful about it," he said. "And that sometimes careful and dumb look the same from the outside." Mia made a sound that was a cry and a laugh at the same time, the Dana sound, the one that lived somewhere between falling apart and pulling together. "I think Mama would like her," Mia said quietly. "I think so too," Ethan said, "for what it's worth." "It's worth a lot," Mia said, and she leaned forward and hugged him around the neck the way she had since she was 2, fierce and total, and Ethan held her and looked at the small room around them. The drawings, the overfull bookshelves, the alphabet magnets she'd outgrown. But that were still on the back of the door, the whale book with the bookmark 3/4 through, and thought about what 4 years of keeping going could quietly, without announcement, become. The weeks that followed didn't transform into something unrecognizable. That wasn't how it worked. Ethan had enough experience with structures to know that the dramatic moment was never the thing. The dramatic moment was just when you finally saw clearly what had already been building beneath the surface. The actual work was in the days after, but the days after were good. Sophie came to dinner on Wednesdays and Saturdays. She and Mia had a standing arrangement about books, 1 per week, with detailed reports delivered in person that had developed its own ceremony and rules that Ethan was not entirely privy to. He didn't ask. Some things were theirs. Mia's teacher, Ms. Delgado, told him at a parent conference in November that Mia was reading 2 grade levels ahead and had written a 3-page story about a bookstore with a mean cat and 2 customers who fell in love through notes in book margins. She had dedicated it in the front to Ms. Sophie and my dad, who figured it out eventually. Ethan brought the story to the bookstore the same afternoon. Sophie read it at the counter silently while he waited. When she finished, she set it down carefully and looked at him over the top of it. 2 customers who fell in love through notes, Sophie said. The Tuesday couple. She remembered that story. She remembers everything. Sophie looked back down at the dedication page. She ran her finger across Mia's careful printed letters. "Can I keep this?" she asked. "It's a photocopy," he said. "Originals on the fridge." She pressed the pages flat with her palm, the way she did with books she was being careful with. "Your daughter is going to wreck people someday," she said. "The good kind of wreck." "I know," Ethan said. "She gets that from you." "I don't." "You walked into this store 4 months ago with a receipt for a book you didn't want and couldn't stop looking at the shelves." She raised an eyebrow. "You wreck people too. Quietly. On a delay." He looked at her across the counter. "Is that a complaint?" "It's a fact," she said. "Facts aren't complaints." It was a Saturday in December when he went back to the beginning, not on purpose. He was waiting for Sophie to finish closing up. They were taking Mia to a Christmas market downtown, the 3 of them, which had become the kind of plan that happened without anyone having to negotiate it, and he was leaning against the counter, looking at the walls, while Sophie counted the register in the back. There was a framed photo near the counter. He'd noticed it before in passing one of several prints she had up, a mix of landscape shots and what he'd taken to be community event photos. But he'd never looked at this particular one closely. He looked now. A woman standing at the water's edge. Blue swimsuit. A wave breaking around her knees. Her head tilted back, mouth open, laughing at something off camera. The whole image lit by flat, clean beach light. The first photo. The exact one. He stood very still for a moment. His hands were in his pockets, and the store was quiet, and he could hear Sophie in the back saying something to Gerald that Gerald was clearly ignoring. He had not realized she had it framed. "Sophie." "2 minutes," she called. "Can you come out here a second?" A pause. Then footsteps. She appeared in the doorway of the back room with her coat half on and a question on her face. He nodded toward the photo. She looked at it, then at him. Something moved in her expression, layered, complicated, and warm all at once. "I forgot you hadn't seen it there," she said. "When did you put it up?" "About 2 months after the beach cleanup." She finished pulling her coat on. "Someone from the parent group sent it to me. I thought it was a good one." "It is," Ethan said. She came to stand beside him, both of them looking at it. "That's the first time I ever saw you," he said. "I know." I closed it so fast. I was embarrassed. "What were you embarrassed about?" He thought about it. "That a photograph of a stranger got under my skin that fast." He paused. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything. "Did you believe yourself?" "No," he said. "Not for a single minute." Sophie looked at the photo for a moment. "I didn't know you'd seen it. Not for a long time." She tilted her head slightly. "When did you tell me at the beach day?" "You weren't angry." "Why would I be angry?" "I don't know. It felt like a confession." "It was," she said. "And it was a good one." She looked up at him. "You know what I remember about that day, the cleanup? I'd been doing it every year for 3 years. It was fine. It was a good thing. I was glad to do it. But I was tired, and it was hot, and I wasn't having as much fun as I looked like I was having." She nodded at the photo. "Someone made a joke right before that. I don't even remember what it was. But I remember thinking just for a second, I'm actually glad I'm here. And that's when whoever took the photo took it." Ethan looked at her. "The laugh wasn't about the day," she said. "It was just a second of being genuinely surprised by being okay." She paused. "I think that's what you saw." "It was," he said. "That's what I thought." She looked at the photo one more time, then turned away. Easy, settled, moving on the way she moved through things. "Mia's going to be furious if we're late for the market." "She's already texting me." "She's 7. Why does she have a phone?" "She's very persuasive." "She absolutely is." Sophie picked up her bag. She stopped at the door and looked back at him, still standing in front of the photo. "Ethan." "Yeah." "You can stop looking at it," she said gently. "The real version's right here." He looked at her coat-on bag over her shoulder, the hand-painted sign above the door behind her, the store around her that smelled like cedar and old paper, and everything she'd built from a grief and a leap of faith and an empty storefront on Grape Street. "I know," he said. He turned off the counterlight and followed her out. Outside, the December air was cold and bright, and Mia was on the sidewalk bouncing on her heels. Whale book under one arm, she brought it everywhere now. And when she saw them come out, she attached herself to Sophie's hand on one side and Ethan's on the other, without breaking stride, like the three of them had been walking this way forever. They moved down the block toward the sound of the market music voices, the smell of roasted nuts drifting down the street, and Ethan looked up at the December dark above the city and thought about a Tuesday night in October, a wrong tap on a phone screen, a photograph filling a laptop display at midnight in a small apartment while a 7-year-old slept. He thought about all the ways a life could be interrupted. About how for the longest time interruption had felt like the enemy, like the thing that took Dana at 31 and left him with a 3-year-old and a broken plate and a map printed wrong. He had spent 4 years building walls against interruption, smooth, load-bearing, calibrated walls. And then a photograph. And then a laugh. And then a woman who handed strangers coffee she didn't drink herself, and shook small children's hands like formal agreements and scripted book handoffs at 8 in the morning and said yes before you finished asking and meant it and held on. He looked down at Mia, who was telling Sophie at full volume about a plot development in the Whale book that she described as devastating, but in a good way. You know, Ms. Sophie, like the best books. And Sophie was nodding with complete seriousness, squeezing Mia's hand and listening like there was nothing in the world she would rather be doing. And Ethan Brooks, 35 years old, single father, construction engineer, widower, Wednesday person, a man who had spent 4 years with his head down, keeping the structure standing, felt something so ordinary and so enormous that he didn't have a technical term for it. He was home. Not a place, not an apartment, not a city. The thing that home actually meant underneath all the real estate. The people you walk toward in the December dark, the hand in yours on the left and the hand in yours on the right, The voices and the laughter and the ordinary, irreplaceable weight of being known. He had built things his whole life. He understood from the bones up what made a structure last, the quality of the foundation, the integrity of the load-bearing pieces, the patience required to build something true rather than something fast. He had not understood until now that the best thing he would ever build had started with a wrong tap on a phone screen and a laugh that had nothing performing in it, and a man who was finally ready to stop being careful and start being present. That was how it happened. That was how it always happened. Not in the grand moments, in the small ones, the accidental ones, the ones you almost close before they can open you. He didn't close this one, and because he didn't, a tired man found his way back to living. A little girl got someone to hold her other hand, and a woman who had spent years showing up for everyone else finally had someone show up for her. Some things begin with a photograph. Everything after is a choice. Ethan Brooks chose well.